Not everybody's going to agree, and not everybody is going to like you, but not to take it personally to the point where it paralyzes you from trying and moving on.
Leadership is everywhere. In our work, in our family, in our community. We see leaders by their actions. We know their legacy. This podcast is about leaders, people just like you, doing amazing things every day. I hope these stories inspire you, they motivate you, and they fuel your leadership legacy. My name is Vicki Guy. Welcome to Ignite. Hi, and welcome to Ignite. We hope that you've been enjoying our conversations, and if so, please hit that subscribe button so that we can continue to expand. We have a great guest here today that reminded me that Henry Ford once said, "One of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his greatest surprises, is to find that he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do." And sometimes we find that the other side of fear is success. Today in Ignite, we'll be talking to the CEO and president of the Community Foundation of North Central Florida, Barzella Papa, who knows how leaving your comfort zone shapes you as a leader. Honored by the Girl Scouts as a woman who makes a difference, she talks about conquering the fear of failure and rejection. In the midst of uncertainty and hardship, Barzella continues to fight for philanthropy by fundraising over $35 million. Stay tuned after this break to hear more from Barzella Papa.
My name is Dana Morrison. I'm the IT director at Grace Christian School in Raleigh, North Carolina. IT directors often hoard so much knowledge that it's hard for their team members to learn. IT Pro TV has given us the ability to level up our technicians to a point where they can decide, this is important for me to learn. I would recommend IT Pro TV to any IT team. It's just a great tool for any IT professional.
Welcome back to Ignite. Today we're here and joined with Barzella Papa, the CEO and president of the North Central Florida Community Foundation. Barzella, welcome to Ignite.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Sure thing. Recently, you told me that you have been recognized by the Girl Scouts for a woman who makes a difference. And certainly that fits right into what we talk about here at Ignite in terms of people that make a difference and they do things in their space that are recognized as a leader. So tell us a little bit about what you do to make a difference.
For the past 13 years, I have served as the first president and CEO of the Community Foundation here in North Central Florida. I was the first full-time one hired, and prior to that, I was also president of the Junior League. So I moved here 20 years ago, and I just became very heavily involved in the community. Through our work at the Community Foundation, we promote and build philanthropy here in North Central Florida, and we give grants and support a number of nonprofits. So we have done some amazing things. We've grown our foundation from $5 million in assets to over $35 million in charitable gifts. We've started such things as our Women's Giving Circle, the area's only giving circle, and also the Amazing Give, our community's only 24-hour online give day. And those two initiatives right there alone have raised almost $5 million for charities all throughout North Central Florida.
Wow, that definitely does make a difference. And I want to come back to some of those events and the role that you've played in those events as well. But first, I want to do a little rewind. And I want to talk about you, right? So those are events that have had an impact in the community. Tell us a little bit about how you have made the journey from maybe, growing up or, your younger days, and you've moved into the space of community service and philanthropic events. What are some events that have actually really impacted your lives to help you find that way?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. So, in what I call my past life, which was my early career, actually I came from a publishing background. I graduated from the University of Alabama a long, long time ago.
We won't hold that against you.
Thank you. And I went to work in the publishing world. I worked at Oxmoor House Books, which is the book publishing division of Southern Living, and then I worked at Time Life Books before we came here. And so even in those capacities in corporate America, I felt very compelled to go above and beyond. And I headed up a number of the volunteer programs back at Southern Living in the day that when I was there through our Adopt a School program. I just always felt like I needed to do more. So it was kind of interesting when we did come to Gainesville. There was no big publishing houses. My first part-time job was at the Gainesville Sun. Worked there, and then I also went to work part-time at the University of Florida as a special event coordinator. I was never afraid to just try a lot of different roles and try to put a lot of different hats on, and became heavily involved in the community. Joined Junior League because we knew no one here, and just to make connections. And fast forward, I got into the league, and in that volunteer capacity, I decided to try again some things I'd never done before. So I started heading up some fundraising events and found myself in the leadership track. And within 7 years of membership, was president of the Junior League. And then that led to a phone call one day from a friend asking would I ever consider working in the nonprofit sector. And I said, why not? Let's give it a try. I'll go talk to him. And that's how it's happened, was really just not being afraid to take a chance and step outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Now, you keep saying that, you keep finding yourself in these leadership roles. And, not everybody finds themselves in a leadership role. Some people want to aspire to be leaders in their own space. Some people want a title. But clearly there are things that have shaped you that allow you to kind of take those leaps or to find your place in a leadership position. Have you had any events, or what really shaped that for you? Is there something internal that kind of drives you, says, that's where I need to be? Or are you just a natural leader and that just kind of happens without you even thinking about it?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you ask that. As I was preparing to accept the honor at the Girl Scouts luncheon here recently, I had to prepare a speech, and I really put a lot of time and thought into what did I want to say? What did I want my message to be? I was never a Girl Scout. I always wanted to be a Girl Scout, but I grew up in a rural part of South Alabama that a population of 250. I actually did go look it up as I was preparing for my speech. So Girl Scouts was not an option. I grew up, as I said, in a rural, small community. But as I was preparing for the speech, I came across some research that really just stuck with me. And it was about how a majority of girls by the age of 13 stop trying new things because of fear of failure. They stop stepping out of their comfort zone because they don't want to be perceived as failing among their peers. And that just made me so sad. And I continue to read more about how there's been a lot of studies that document how women won't apply for a job unless they're 100% certain that they qualify for it. Whereas with men, that's more around the 60% mark, that they tend to go, well, what doesn't kill you? So on. I have always just been a big believer in stepping outside of that comfort zone and just going for it. And I try to encourage my kids to do the same thing. My staff, any employees, sure, step out of your comfort zone and do something different.
And so I'm sure you've stepped out of your comfort zone quite a number of times. Can you share with us a time when you have kind of taken that leap or stepped outside of your comfort zone, where either you can share whatever you want, whether it's good or bad, but give us an example of what that looked like for you?
Well, I think the riskiest that I ever did was when I was 19 years old. I hopped on an Amtrak train with 2 Foot Lockers and went to New York City to pursue a career as a model. I had, when I was around 15, 16 years old, started modeling for the local department store, and all of a sudden I want to do this. So my mom let me go. It was pretty scary. I literally got on it. I have a family picture of us all standing at the train station in Mississippi, because I think I had to go to Hattiesburg to catch the train at the time. And went to New York. Did not know where I was going when I got to Grand Central Station, but made it work. Literally spent the next 2 years pounding the pavement, and met some lifelong friends, many that I'm still close with today. And I think that period of time, for most people, it's a very vulnerable time. And New York City and going on casting calls is a major grow up lesson. You have to develop thick skin. So yeah, I had some casting agents that were like, no, you need to go back home, but I didn't. I continued to persevere and made it work, and I actually ended up working. I had a professional career for almost 20 years, even though I left New York, because by the time I was 21, my mom said, "All right, you need to finish your college degree," and so I decided, all right, I'll go back, I'll finish, and then I'll come back to New York. But obviously, my life took different paths then. But that was definitely one of the, I would say, definitely a very risky move. If my daughter asked me if she could do it, I would probably say no.
Oh, come on, Mom.
I would no, I would let her go. I would encourage her to do it as well.
Yeah. Well, that is risky. I mean, thinking about coming from a small town and then getting off the train in New York City, that had to have been a culture shock for you. And not only a culture shock, but that's a pretty young age to be out on your own and being able to fend for yourself. I bet some of the lessons that you learned there, you've been able to translate into all that you do now and probably throughout your career. How has that experience impacted who you are today?
Um, that period of time definitely, it definitely taught me to not listen to the negative criticism, to just, people's feedback, take and learn things from it and move on, not to take it personally. I learned there that, that thick skin that I mentioned and that I talked about. As I've moved forward, sometimes you're going to have to make tough decisions, and not everybody's going to agree, and not everybody is going to like you. But not to take it personally to the point where it paralyzes you from trying and moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a hard lesson sometimes to take. It's good to hear, but sometimes it's hard to apply. There's a lot of, especially with social media. I know I've talked about social media on several of our shows, but certainly we have a lot of influence and a lot of pressures through that social media channel that we see today. So certainly, a huge impact in what we do. You mentioned also about young women and women who are, young girls, age of 13, I think the research was showing a fear of failure and trying new things. Probably, if we're not pushed into New York City to try something new, and I'll say push, you probably weren't pushed. I know you wanted to go, right? But if we didn't experience a life-changing event like that to get us out of our comfort zone, how do we get that same experience to make ourselves more comfortable so that we can try new things and pursue the things that we want to do without fearing or that we're not perfect?
I think it can be as simple as it can be baby steps. It can just be something in your day to day that, I've never done this before, or I've never cooked this tough dish, or I've never manned the grill, or whatever. Just starting to do new things and stepping outside of that comfort zone. When you do that, you'll realize, wait, I can do this. I can do this. And it'll tap into that ability that you didn't know that you have. And, that causes you to grow as a person. So whether it's in a volunteer capacity, because that's what I found myself doing when we came to Gainesville, when we came to North Central Florida, and I got involved in the community. I had never fundraised before in my life. But then suddenly I was asked, hey, will you head this up? And got in it, tried it, and made some great friends, made a lot of connections, and was like, oh, I can do this. And it eventually did. It led to my work now at the Community Foundation. And I laughed. I even told the audience last week, I've been at the Community Foundation now for 13 years. We've grown by millions, and we've given away over $25 million in grants. I still don't consider myself a fundraiser. It's just about connecting people to the causes and causes to people. That really is what spawns the growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and certainly some of that connection can be overwhelming because in a thriving community where there is a lot of need in terms of help from the community to continue growth, you're probably pulled in a lot of directions and you're probably having to take risks where you're at. Have there been a couple things that you've had to face in your current role that were risky and could have maybe not gone the way you wanted them to, but probably because of your experience, you've been able to kind of push through and make them successful. Have you had anything like that happen?
Oh, absolutely. My biggest piece of advice, not only in the nonprofit sector, but well, mostly in the nonprofit sector because that's been my area for the last 13 years, is anytime you try something new, always enter it with an exit plan. So, and again, I go back to that, not being afraid to fail. Certainly, there's been a few things that we've tried to do and that we've put, tens upon tens, maybe in the case of $100,000 into, and it failed. It didn't work. We didn't get the buy-in from the community. We didn't get the buy-in from the partners, and it was okay. It was okay. We tried. It wasn't the time. Maybe on down the road. One thing I learned in fundraising is no doesn't mean no. It means try again later. So same thing goes with when we start programs or we try to do a collaboration. If it doesn't work right now, it just might not be the time. Not take it personally. Learn from it, those mistakes, and then move on. You will have something that will be a success.
Mm-hmm. Timing is a really interesting topic, and there are probably situations you can think about also where maybe you've tried some things personally or professionally, perhaps in your current role or in a previous role that you did find that it was just not the right time, but then later came full circle. Can you think of anything that kind of fits that category for you, that maybe you tried it and you're like, maybe now this is not the right time, but then it came back, and because you had planted those seeds and you had taken that risk, it has come back to you and flourished?
Oh, absolutely. I would say right off the top of my head, our work with building capacity in our local nonprofit sector, we realized years ago that there was a tremendous need for helping support the nonprofits from an organizational standpoint. They were doing great work, but maybe not the best management practices, loose accounting, loose bookkeeping, not bad, but they just needed that help. A lot of the times with nonprofits, they're small shops and they're wearing so many hats, from event fundraising to trying to deliver the program. Some of them even drive the van to pick up kids that they have to get into their after school programs. So we saw a need a long time ago for helping that in our local community. However, we didn't have the capacity to do it, so we had to let it go. Fast forward, I think it was about 5 years. Then it came to fruition. So one of our programs that we run at the Community Foundation is the Center for Nonprofit Excellence here. It's ongoing networking, training, and support for professionals in the nonprofit sector, from anything from board management to volunteer management to best practices in accounting. But as I said, it wasn't the right time for us to do that 8 years ago, but now it is, and now we have had great success in growing that program.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it has to do with connections that you've made along the way, making sure that comes back and you maybe tried a different way or a different time. Connections can really help us in a lot of ways. People talk about networking all the time, and some people say, oh, I hate networking. I actually, I just talked to somebody recently who said, if you're at a networking event and you meet one person, after you meet that one person, go ahead and leave, because that's all you need to do. And I thought, I don't know if I buy into that, really, because I want to network and talk to everybody in the room, right? But I guess depending on your personality, we all know that networking is a positive thing. It can help us in our career. How has networking played a role in your early career and then throughout the last few years in your current role?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I have just been so fortunate that what is it they say about luck and when opportunity and the two of those meet. I had incredible female mentors. And actually, last week when I was working on that speech, I was going over it with my husband, and he pointed out, he said, "Do you realize that everyone that's ever hired you was a woman?" So it was very interesting that I was able to learn at a young age. Wow, okay, I'm just going to take notes of what she did and great best practices, and she was a phenomenal boss. So that helped me build from one to another, was carrying those connections and staying in touch. And the same thing, getting involved in the local junior league, meeting women there, that's what really propelled to where I am now, was those connections of, hey, I know somebody. Are you interested in this? And getting that phone call. So yes, networking is essential, and definitely nowadays, in the age of social media, having those personal connections, so you just don't get lost in the mix.
Yeah. And I know we've been talking a lot about the volunteerism or philanthropic events, but a lot of the people that are listening are probably listening from a corporate standpoint. So they're in a for-profit industry. If you had to leave people with a couple of pieces of advice in terms of how you would, think lessons that you've learned and how they could apply it to their own space in terms of a leadership or profitability, or, I mean, gosh, the amount of growth that you've seen in the community foundation, you said from 5 to 35 million, that's huge, right? What advice can you give to people that are listening that they can translate that information and use it in their own space?
Don't be afraid to take a risk. But as I said, when you take a risk, also enter into it with an exit plan. I always laugh about the nonprofit sector. I say most nonprofits they set up to go out of business, right? They are trying to tackle and create a solution to a social issue. So they open up hoping to get rid of this issue and therefore go out of business. So it's definitely an interesting business model. So you have to be able to take risk. But enter into it with, okay, if this doesn't work out, or okay, 5 years from now, are we still going to be doing this? 10 years from now, are we still going to be doing this? And also be open to ideas for change and how to improve. Every time we do anything, whether it's an event or a training opportunity, we ask for feedback. Even with our board of directors, after board meetings or once a year, we'll say, give us feedback. How was the meeting? People want to feel valued. It doesn't matter if it's for profit or not for profit. So don't waste their time, make it feel like a value add, and get their feedback. That's our biggest thing is, in the nonprofit sector, we're dealing with a board of directors that they're not getting paid. They're coming because they care about it, but they're giving their time. So I want to make sure that they feel like they got a value add for it, for being involved, and that it wasn't a waste of their time. So be willing to take risk, evaluate, enter in with an exit plan. Those are definitely the things that I always keep in the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, and the value, bringing the value.
Yes.
Some really good advice. So what area of North Central Florida do you cover, just in case our listeners are looking to get some support or connection from the Community Foundation?
This whole area, I think up to Lake City, there is a community foundation down in Ocala. There's actually, I think, 27 community foundations in Florida now. Ours is just 20 years old, but we're small but mighty and doing great. But
Is it national? Is it a national organization?
So community foundations, that's a great question. It's an interesting model. There's actually 700 around the United States and more than 1,800 worldwide. The business model was created in 1914, so it's only been around for about 100 years. It didn't get to Florida until the early 60s. Jacksonville was the first one in, I believe, 1964. But it's been the fastest growing sector in all of philanthropy. It's an interesting model where people can come and create their charitable funds, and we handle all of that back office. So we can provide support anywhere. Our focus is North Central Florida, building and growing and sustaining philanthropy in this community.
So people can certainly connect with you here, and I'm sure in their own communities they can find a chapter that is more relevant to the location that they're in. So Barzella, thank you so much for being here with us on Ignite. Some really good pearls of wisdom. I appreciate you sharing your stories, and congratulations on your recent award. In just a moment, we'll be right back with some final thoughts on Ignite.
I'm James Packer. I'm the General Manager of Kirk ISS based in the Cayman Islands. I used IT Pro TV extensively in my last place. It grew very well, helped upskill the team. I had 110 engineers in the field, and we had dozens of IT Pro accounts with the guys training, and last year alone they passed over 40 certs by using the online training. I think I can safely say without IT Pro TV I wouldn't be where I was today, because I only got this job on the back of the qualifications I have.
Welcome back to Ignite. As we talked to Barzella, we learned how her professional success stems from her devotion to charity and her appreciation for staff and volunteers. Her philosophy to take risks and persevere is the perfect example of a leader. Hopefully, her stories have inspired you as much as they have inspired me. Please subscribe to Ignite and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn to find the latest episodes. From IT Pro TV and myself, thank you and see you next time.